The siege of Karath Prime fleet. Admiral Sirene Voss stood on the command deck of the Confederate flagship Sovereign Will and watched her fleet die. The battle had begun 3 days ago with hope. 800 warships of the Velari Confederation had formed a defensive sphere around HFY Prime, their formation tight and disciplined. Orbital defense stations added their firepower to the mix. Planetary shield generators hummed with enough power to stop a small moon. By every calculation, by every strategic model, they should have been able to hold. But the Drachnal had brought 2,000 ships, and they had brought something new. Another shield collapse on Station 7, reported her tactical officer, his voice cracking with exhaustion. They're using those gravity weapons again. We can't compensate fast enough, Serena. Watched the holographic display as another cluster of friendly signatures winked out of existence. The Drachnal gravity disruptors were tearing holes in their shield coverage, creating gaps that lasted only seconds, but allowed perfectly timed torpedo strikes to slip through. It was like fighting an enemy who could open doors in your armor whenever they wished. How many ships do we have left? She asked. 17 combat effective, another 40 with partial systems. The tactical officer paused. Down from 800, Admiral. Serena closed her eyes for a moment. 600 ships destroyed or disabled in 3 days. Tens of thousands of crew members dead, and the Drachnal kept coming. Their insectoid warriors apparently feeling no fatigue, no grief, no hesitation. The door to the command deck slid open and High Marshal Torben entered. The Velari commander was tall and thin, his blue-caled skin pale with stress. His species had held Karath Prime for 3 centuries. His ancestors had built the cities below. His children lived in those cities now, looking up at a sky filled with war. The planetary shields are at 30%, Torben said. His voice was calm, but Serena had served with him long enough to hear the despair underneath. My engineers estimate 18 hours before complete failure, and then the Drachnal land and my people. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Everyone knew what the Drachnal did to conquered populations. They did not take slaves. They did not negotiate surrender. They simply eliminated any species they considered inferior, which was all of them. Serena turned to her communications officer. Get me a priority channel to Confederation High Command maximum encryption. The connection took several minutes to establish. When the face of Grand Admiral Petrov appeared on the screen, Serena felt a small spark of hope. Petrov was a legend, a commander who had won battles against impossible odds. Admiral Voss, Petrov said, I've been monitoring your situation. You've done remarkable work holding as long as you have. Sir, we need immediate reinforcement. The Drachnal have deployed weapons we've never seen before. Our defensive calculations were based on outdated intelligence. Petrov's expression tightened. I know, and I wish I had better news. He paused. And in that pause, Serena felt her hope begin to die. The nearest major fleet is 6 days away at maximum speed. We're repositioning as fast as we can. But the Hegemony chose their timing well. Our forces are scattered across the sector, responding to smaller attacks. 6 days, Serena repeated. We have 18 hours, I know. Petrov looked older than she had ever seen him. I'm sorry, Serena. Hold as long as you can. Make them Clear's throat pay for every kilometer, but prepare evacuation protocols for essential personnel. The channel closed. Serena stood in silence, feeling the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders. Essential personnel. That meant abandoning billions of civilians to die. While a few thousand fled to safety, there must be something else we can do, she said, though she did not know who she was speaking to. Perhaps herself. Perhaps whatever gods might be listening. Hi, Marshal. Torben stepped closer to her. His voice was quiet, meant only for her ears. There is one option we have not considered. Serena looked at him. I'm listening. There is a species whose ships could reach us in time. Species whose military power could change this battle. Torben's scales rippled, a sign of deep discomfort among his people. But no one has asked them for military aid in over a century. No one has wanted to. Serena felt a chill run down her spine. She knew exactly who he meant. Everyone in the galaxy knew, even if they rarely spoke of it directly. The humans, she said. Torben nodded. The humans. The command deck had gone quiet. Every officer had stopped their work listening. Serena saw fear on their faces, but also a desperate hope. They're neutral in most conflicts, Serena said. They trade with everyone, fight for no one. Why would they help us? Because we will ask, Torben said simply. And because the humans have strange ideas about what wars are worth fighting. They ignore conflicts over territory, over resources, over political power. But the Drachnal, he gestured toward the viewport where distant explosions still flickered. The Drachnal commit genocide. The humans have opinions about genocide. Sirene thought about what she knew of humanity. They had joined galactic civilization barely 2 centuries ago. A young species from an unremarkable planet in an unfashionable corner of the galaxy. They had been dismissed at first as primitive, aggressive, short-lived creatures with no special abilities. Then came the Kree. War. She had been a young officer when news of that conflict reached her homeworld. The Kreminian had ruled 60 species through terror and brutality. They had attacked a human colony, killing 12,000 civilians, expecting the young species to submit like all the others. The humans had not submitted. What followed was not a war in any conventional sense. It was an execution. The humans dismantled the Kree Dominion in 18 months. Not defeated, not conquered, dismantled. When it was over, Kree civilization had effectively ceased to exist. Their military was destroyed. Their government collapsed. Their homeworld was... No one quite knew what had happened to their homeworld. The humans did not discuss it. And then, strangest of all, the humans had helped the 60 subjugated species establish their own governments. They had provided aid, shared technology, rebuilt what the Kree had destroyed. And then they had withdrawn, asking for nothing in return except that no one attacked them again. The galaxy had learned 2 lessons from that war. First, humans did not start conflicts, but they finished them absolutely. Second, their mercy afterward was somehow more terrifying than their wrath, because it proved the destruction had not been passion. It had been policy. Even if they respond, Sirene said slowly, they might not arrive in time. Human ships are faster than ours, Torben replied. Their technology is different, more advanced than they usually admit. He looked at her, with eyes that held centuries of Velari pride, now bent by desperation. Admiral, I am asking you to call them. I am asking you to save my people, even if it means owing a debt to the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Sirene looked at the holographic display. Another Confederate ship had just been destroyed, its crew of 300 dying in the cold vacuum of space. In 18 hours, billions more would join them. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel on the emergency frequency. Widest possible broadcast human military. Encryption, Admiral. The officer looked uncertain. What should I say? Sirene thought for a moment. Then she began to speak and her words went out into the darkness of space. This is Fleet Admiral Sirene Voss of the Velari Confederation requesting immediate military assistance. Karath Prime is under attack by the Drachnal hegemony. Our defenses are failing. Civilian population numbers in the billions. The Drachnal do not take prisoners. She paused. We are asking for help from anyone. Who will answer from anyone who cares about what happens next? She nodded and the officer ended the transmission. Now we wait, she said. Outside the viewport, the battle continued. Ships died. People screamed their last breaths into uncaring void. The Drachnal Armada moved closer, patient and relentless, confident that victory was only a matter of time. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the message traveled outward at the speed of light, carrying a desperate plea to the one species that everyone feared. Sirene did not know if the humans would answer. She did not know if they could arrive in time. She did not know what price they might demand for their help. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. If the humans did come, the Drachnal would learn why the galaxy had spent a century being very, very careful not to make humanity angry. She hoped it would be enough. The response came faster than anyone expected. Admiral Voss had been preparing for another wave of Drachnal attacks when her communications officer suddenly sat upright, his face showing an expression she could not quite read. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission on human military frequencies. It's close, very close. How close? Voss asked. Before the officer could answer, a new signature appeared on the tactical display. A single ship emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the combat zone. It was smaller than a Drachnal battleship, larger than a Confederate frigate. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with clean angular lines that seemed designed more for efficiency than intimidation. This is Captain Marcus Cole of the United Nations Ship Temperance, came a voice over the communication channel. The speaker sounded calm, almost casual, as if he were announcing his arrival. At a social gathering, rather than a desperate battlefield. We received your distress call. Admiral Voss, we were conducting a routine patrol in the neighboring system. Happy to offer assistance. Voss stared at the display. One ship. They had received one ship. Captain Cole, I appreciate your response, but I must be direct with you. We are facing an armada of nearly 2,000 enemy vessels. Our fleet has been reduced to less than 200. One ship. Even a human ship cannot change these odds. There was a brief pause when Cole spoke again. There was something in his voice that Voss could not quite identify. Amusement, perhaps, or patience. I understand your concern, Admiral. Let me assure you that additional forces are being mobilized as we speak. In the meantime, the Temperance will do what it can to improve your situation. With your permission, I'd like to open communications with the Drachnal commander. Voss exchanged glances with High Marshal Torben, who had remained on the command deck since his earlier suggestion. The Velari commander gave a small nod. Permission granted, Captain, though I doubt the Drachnal will be interested in negotiation. We'll see, Cole said simply, switching to open broadcast. Far across the battlefield on the command deck of the Drachnal flagship Eternal Conquest. Supreme Commander? Kethrax was savoring his imminent victory when an officer interrupted his thoughts. Supreme Commander, we are detecting a new vessel. Unknown configuration. It's broadcasting on open frequencies. Kethrax turned his attention to the display. His compound eyes studied the small ship that had appeared behind the enemy lines. Compared to his massive battleships, it looked almost fragile. A single ship, he said. The Confederation must be truly desperate if they're calling in favors from minor species. Supreme Commander, said another officer, this one older, his carapace marked with the scars of many campaigns. That ship configuration matches human military design. The command deck went quiet. Thrax noticed that several of his officers had stopped moving entirely. Human? He considered this for a moment. What are humans doing in this sector? Before anyone could answer, the human ship began broadcasting. This is Captain Marcus Cole of the United Nations ship. Temperance to the commander of the Drachnal fleet. I am here to inform you that HFY Prime is now under human protection. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawing your forces from the system. If you fail to comply, you will face the consequences of your decision. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. Temperance out. Kethrex stared at the display in disbelief. Then he began to laugh, a harsh clicking sound that echoed through the command deck. One ship, he said. One ship gives me an ultimatum. The humans have grown arrogant in their isolation. He turned to his tactical officer. Send 50 ships to destroy that vessel. Make it spectacular. Let the Confederation see what happens to those who interfere with the hegemony. Supreme Commander, the scarred officer spoke again. I strongly advise against engaging human forces. Our intelligence files contain extensive documentation of the Kree war. The tactical implications alone. The Kree were weak, Kethrax interrupted. They had grown soft from centuries of easy conquest. We are not the Kree, we are the Drachnal. We have never been defeated. He gestured sharply. Send the ships now. The order was obeyed. 50 Drachnal warships broke formation and accelerated toward the lone human vessel. In the tactical center of Eternal Conquest, Senior Intelligence Officer Vexar watched the deployment with growing unease. Unlike Kethrax, he had studied the humans extensively. Unlike Kethrax, he understood what they were facing. He pulled up the classified files on his personal display. The Kree war documentation was extensive, compiled from survivors, refugees, and intercepted communications. Most of it had been suppressed by High Command, deemed too disturbing for general distribution. The humans had not just defeated the Kree, they had systematically dismantled everything the Kree had built. Their military response had been precise, patient, and utterly without mercy. They had tracked down every Kree fleet, every military installation, every weapons factory. They had done it in 18 months, a campaign that should have taken decades. And then, when it was over, they had shown mercy to everyone except the Krems themselves. They had helped the conquered species rebuild. They had provided food, medicine, technology. They had asked for nothing in return. Vexar found that mercy more terrifying than any weapon. It proved that the humans were not acting from emotion. They were not angry, not vengeful, not driven by passion. They had simply decided that the Kree needed to be removed from existence, and they had done so with the same efficiency that a surgeon might remove a tumor. The galaxy had spent a century being very careful not to give the humans a reason to make similar decisions about anyone else. And now Kethrax was sending 50 ships to attack them. Vexer considered speaking up again, but he knew it would be useless. Thrax was too proud to retreat, too confident in his own superiority. He would not listen until he was forced to understand. On the human ship Temperance, Captain Cole watched the approaching Drachnal formation on his tactical display. His crew moved with quiet efficiency around him, preparing systems, running final calculations. 50 ships, Captain, his executive officer reported. Standard attack formation. Estimated contact in 6 minutes. Cole nodded. Have they tried to communicate? No, sir. They appear to be treating this as a pure combat engagement. Unfortunate. Cole sat back in his command chair. All right, let's give them their lesson. Weapons free. Defensive pattern Omega. Lethal force is not authorized. I repeat, lethal force is not authorized. We're going to show them what we can do. We're not going to kill them for being stupid. The crew acknowledged his orders. The Temperance began to move, accelerating, not away from the attacking ships, but directly toward them. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss watched in horror as the human ship rushed toward 50 enemies. What is he doing? She demanded. That's suicide. High Marshal Torvin said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the display. The Drachnal ships opened fire. Hundreds of weapon systems unleashed their fury at the tiny human vessel. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, guided missiles, all converging on a single target. None of them hit. The Temperance moved through the fire like water through a net. Its point defense systems tracked incoming projectiles with impossible precision, destroying them meters from the hull. Its engines adjusted course constantly, finding the gaps in the firing patterns that should not have existed. And then it began to fire back. The human weapons did not look impressive. No massive plasma bursts, no spectacular energy beams, just small, fast projectiles that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Each shot struck a precise location on each target. Engines, weapon systems, communication arrays, never life support, never crew quarters. Just the systems needed to fight. In 11 minutes, 50 Drachnal warships drifted dead in space. Their crews were alive, their ships intact but completely disabled. Captain Cole's voice came over the open channel again. Supreme Commander Kethrax, that was your one free lesson. The next engagement will not be so gentle. You now have 49 minutes to begin your withdrawal. On the Confederate flagship, Admiral Voss realized she had forgotten to breathe. One ship, she whispered. One ship did that. Torvin's voice was equally quiet, and it was holding back. Did you notice not a single Drachnal died? The humans disabled 50 warships without killing anyone. He turned to look at her, and his expression was unreadable. They wanted us to see that they could have killed everyone, and they chose not to. Before Voss could respond, her sensor officer spoke up, his voice strange and distant. Admiral, we're detecting new hyperspace signatures. Multiple signatures. Many signatures. The display updated. At the edge of the system, space itself seemed to tear open as ship after ship emerged from hyperspace. Human ships, cruisers, destroyers, battleships, carriers. And at the center of the formation, something massive. Something that made even the largest Drachnal battleship look small. 300 ships. The sensor officer reported the lead vessel is broadcasting identification. UNS Consequence, Admiral Helena Park commanding. Voss felt something she had not felt in 3 days. Hope. On the eternal conquest. Supreme Commander Kethra stared at the display as 300 human warships took position around his armada. His 50 ships were drifting uselessly, their crews screaming for rescue. The enemy fleet had lost nothing. For the first time in his long career of conquest, Kethrax began to understand what fear felt like. The arrival Admiral Helena Park stood on the bridge of the UN's Consequence and surveyed the battlefield. The Dreadnought was the largest vessel humanity had ever constructed. Nearly 3 kilometers of armored hull packed, with weapons that most species could not even understand. It had never been deployed in combat before. She hoped it would not need to be deployed in combat. Now all ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer announced. Captain Cole's Temperance is requesting permission to join the main formation. Granted, and get me a channel to the Confederate flagship. I want to coordinate with Admiral Voss before we proceed. The communication was established quickly. On the screen, Park saw a tired woman in a Confederate uniform, her face showing the strain of 3 days of desperate fighting. Admiral Park, Voss said, I cannot express how grateful we are for your arrival. Your timing is remarkable. We move fast when we need to, Park replied. I've reviewed the tactical situation. Your people have done an impressive job holding as long as you have. The Drow committed Signify,